Jackie Speier right now, she's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. She had a chance to question James Comey at that hearing today. Congresswoman, several headlines coming out of this. One, the FBI director saying he has no evidence to support what Donald Trump said on Twitter about former President Obama ordering a wiretap of Trump Tower. Also confirming that there is an investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. That investigation is looking at whether there was communication contact between members of the Trump team and Russian intelligence. What did you learn from this hearing today?
Well, those were two power-packed announcements today. First of all, we now know that the real fake news was coming out of the tweet from the president. Not that any of us doubted it, but it was really very good to hear the director actually make that statement. It hasn't prevented, unfortunately, Sean Spicer from continuing to say the same things. It's important for the president to apologize, to retract the statement, but most importantly, to apologize to President Obama, who has been remarkably silent with the outrageous comments being made against him. As for the second, it was important to note that he said that it was also including the Trump orbit and those who were engaged in the Trump campaign and whether or not they were engaged with the Russians in collusion or aiding and abetting in their efforts to undermine Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Well, at the very end of that hearing, the chairman of your committee, a Republican, Devin Nunes, he said that there is now a cloud over this administration, over some very important people in the federal government right now. He seemed frustrated that there was no timetable from Comey in terms of how long the investigation will take, whether there'd be any updates, the ability to provide information during that investigation. Sounds like that won't be forthcoming. I guess my question is, what is the future like in Washington, in the Capitol, with this investigation now announced and no more clarity beyond that?
Well, Chairman Nunes should just look back at the Benghazi hearings that went on for over 2 years, with over 32 hearings and at a cost of over $7 million. Somehow they weren't complaining about the length of the Benghazi investigation, and they, clearly are complaining after just a few months of this investigation. Investigations take long periods of time, and oftentimes they don't come in with the results that either side wants, and that's why having an independent commission, frankly, is the best way to go, or a special prosecutor.
You had an exchange we're going to play here with the FBI director. Let's take a listen and talk to you about that.
Is Russia our adversary? Mr. Comey?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Do they intend to do us harm?
They intend to ensure, I believe, that they gain advantage at our expense.
Director Comey?
Yes, I want to be, harm can have many meanings. They're an adversary, and so they want to resist us, oppose us, undermine us in lots of different ways.
Congressman, I was listening to that exchange, and I did think back to the 2012 presidential campaign when it was the Republican nominee Mitt Romney who said during that campaign he considered Russia our top geopolitical foe. And the response from Democrats was ridicule, quite frankly, to the notion, it seemed, even of an adversarial relationship with Russia. Obviously, a lot has happened since then. There was the Russian invasion of Ukraine. There's all of the issue now with our election, with Russian interference there. Looking back, though, were Democrats guilty of being naive 4 or 5 years ago when they ridiculed Mitt Romney for saying that?
Well, I think there's always been an interest in resetting the relationship with Russia in administration after administration. I think we finally have recognized there's no way to reset that relationship. Under President Putin, he is a KGB operative from day one, and he is out to maximize his position in the world, oftentimes using hybrid warfare. And I really think that this actual influence into our election is an act of war. It may be hybrid war, but it is, in fact, what we're dealing with. And we should be so outraged by it as opposed to, in some cases, people yawning about it. And the hearing today was really important for the American people to hear all of the interrelationships, connect the dots, see why having Russian people or those who have done business with Russia or have relationships with Russia in the administration, in the cabinet, is not necessarily in our best interest.
You used a very loaded term there describing Russian interference in the election. You said an act of war. An act of war typically then requires retaliation. What would you say the retaliation should be for an act of war?
Well, it is an effort to undermine our country. And while there weren't bombs being used, there were many efforts in terms of data that were weaponized. And in that kind of a setting, I think we should look at that with the eye that they need to be slapped down for that kind of conduct. That's why we're working with many of our allies in Europe right now, making sure that they're aware of the kind of techniques that Putin and his data gurus were using and stop it in its track.
Is the kind of retaliation you have in mind? Is it sanctions? Is it cyber retaliation? Is it something else?
It could be all of the above, Steve.
All right, Congresswoman Jackie Speier, a Democrat, member of that committee that heard from the FBI Director today. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us.